Today, I'm looking back at what I consider to be one of Sony's underrated gems, Days Gone. Upon its release, the game received mixed reviews from video game journalists. You know, the so-called professionals we should all take about as seriously as a limbless serial killer. Complaints included the story, mission design, the underdevelopment of the main character, and technical issues, most of which have been patched, by the way. I will be answering the question everyone is wondering. Did Days Gone deserve the criticism it got, or is it a misunderstood masterpiece? No. But Days Gone is still way better than what these journalists gave it credit for. The setting is 2 years into post-apocalyptic Oregon. Protagonist Deacon St. John and his bro from another hoe, William Boozer, are the last surviving members of the motorcycle club known as the Mongrels Motorcycle Club. Deacon and Boozer have been living in the wilderness for the past 2 years. Naturally, Deacon's got a major case of the grumps as a result of not seeing his wife Sarah for the past 2 years, who, as far as he knows, is dead. There are a bunch of stories coinciding with each other, the main one being about how Deacon works alongside a Nero researcher named O'Brien, who saved Sarah 2 years prior by taking her on a Nero chopper to a safe location, after she was sliced open like a pig. Much like before, Deacon politely asks O'Brien for help. In this case, finding any clues of Sarah's whereabouts, since Deacon figures if O'Brien survived, then surely there's a chance my Who from the Grinch That Stole Christmas looking wife did too. On his mission, Deacon contends with freakers, Days Gone's equivalent to zombies, and hostile survivors, including the Rippers. Insert fart joke here. A batshit insane cult consisting of a bunch of skin-headed masochists who worship freakers. Does this story sound boring to you? Yeah, didn't think so. It's actually pretty damn good, though naturally it's not perfect. The writing can be hit and miss at times, which makes sense considering the fact this game's script was literally written by one man. If you are writing a script for a game, especially one of this grandeur, you shouldn't be doing it alone. You need people to proofread your writing. That way they can say, wait a second, this actually kind of fucking sucks. Let's change it. Much like The Walking Dead, where there are good episodes, there are also a lot of filler episodes, something I'll go deeper into later on in this video. Another gripe I have with Days Gone's story is the source behind the infection. Once you find out how it all started, you can't help but feel disappointed, as it's something you have probably most definitely already heard of before. One of the most important relationships is the one between Deacon and Sarah. During the flashbacks, instead of being written as an adult couple, they were written as an awkward teenage couple with piss-poor chemistry.
Here, you can have this one back. But only if you promise to ride me as much as you ride your bike.
Almost a year ago, I used the same example, Deacon and Sarah's wedding, as not so good writing in my review of Days Gone. Looking back at it, I was needlessly harsh. Yes, it is undeniably cheesy. Once you understand the context behind the scene, however, sound like a Karen with that one, however, it's actually quite touching what Sarah did. I also said Deacon and Sarah were written like a teenage couple with piss-poor chemistry. Even though I still think the writing isn't perfect and their relationship could have been executed better, calling it piss poor was a little extreme. And for that, I'm truly, absolutely, positively, genuinely sorry, eh? The villains, on the other hand, while having serious potential, were not nearly as fleshed out as they should have been. In that regard, the villains are just okay. I disagree with the critics in the aspect where Deacon is underdeveloped, though. Obviously, he isn't the most complex, well-written, or memorable character, but he does develop more throughout the game. He starts off by being cold, miserable, and distant. As the game progresses, however, he starts opening up, becoming far more heroic in the process. This is made evident throughout the game whenever he risks the skin off his flat ass to save others. He will even kill his mortally wounded enemies with a quick headshot so they don't have to get eaten alive by freakers. Aside from Deacon, I'm also fond of the many side characters, especially Boozer, who, as I stated beforehand, is like Deacon's brother. Unlike the relationship between Deacon and Sarah, the one between Deacon and Boozer feels legitimate. The game does a really good job at depicting the friendship and the loyalty brothers have with one another. Much like brothers, they shoot the shit, crack jokes, playfully make fun of one another, and sometimes even fight. But at the end of the day, when shit gets real rank, they have each other's backs.
Don't take my shotgun.
Boozer. All right. Here you go.
Thanks, brother. Just feel kind of naked without it.
The story may have some bumps along the way, but it's also got some fairly well-written, emotional moments. As for the voice acting of the characters, most of the performances are fantastic. Especially Sam Witwer, the voice actor and facial model for Deacon. He encapsulates the role of a grieving, distant, depressed, desperate man who has been thrown neck deep in apocalyptic shit so damn well.
Don't worry. This is never gonna happen again.
The game is over 30 hours long. Sure, it's a long game, but what good is length when the quality isn't consistently good throughout? This is a big problem for Days Gone, as a sizable amount of those 30 plus hours is dedicated towards completing missions that feel like needless padding. These missions include either bounty hunts where you track down some dipshit on foot or chase them on their bike, eavesdropping on Nero researchers who are guarded by heavily armed Nero soldiers, although the intel you learn from them is interesting at least.
This watch looks new.
Really? So
That means this subject has either been taking care of it, or has recently
put it on. Shit, I thought they were all,
That shit crazy? Yeah, they are, but just as some late-stage dementia patients could still have moments of lucidity, victims of stage 2 virus infections seem to retain some level of vestigial memory.
And the most intense missions of all, checking in on certain characters. I'm not even joking. There are missions dedicated to flashbacks. I do like playable flashbacks. Sadly, the flashbacks in Days Gone suck. They include some gameplay, but for the most part, it's like being confined to a track as you walk at the same pace as a 110-year-old elderly man towards a destination that might as well be 10,000 miles away. If I wanted to play a game where you walk at a slightly faster pace than a dead man, then I would play a fucking turtle simulator. And it's all accompanied by walls of meh dialogue, along with boring objectives like collecting flowers.
Okay, you try picking some now.
lavender. You want me to pick lavender?
Yep. And bring me 3 plants and don't crush them.
Oh, I'm gonna crush them.
Yippee-ki-yay. Sometimes the flashbacks are in-game, but you have no control over Deacon at all, rendering them pointless. I assume the flashbacks were handled poorly due to time and budget constraints. Thankfully, there are also a great deal of missions that actually feel like proper missions. They move the plot forward in a meaningful way by tightening up the action, pacing, and focusing more on developing the relationships between Deacon and the supporting cast. If the game cut down the amount of filler overused missions, made the flashbacks more exciting, and focused on making each mission distinct, then the game would have benefited greatly from it. Deviating away from the main story's cons, the side content in this game is pretty lackluster, as it's made up of remaining bounties, enemy camps, and hordes you haven't cleared out yet. The most irritating part about this game, or one of them anyway, is its handling of cutscenes. In Days Gone, every time gameplay transitions into a cutscene, it isn't seamless. Whenever there's a cutscene, it is preceded by a black screen. Sometimes it only lasts a couple seconds, while other times it's a full-on loading screen, a fairly long one at that. It's pretty disappointing considering plenty of PS4 games pull off seamless transitions between gameplay and cutscene, whereas this game makes it far more obvious. There is a wide variety of weapons you can find on the open field. Axes, machetes, and baseball bats are just a few examples. If you have the right resources, some weapons can even be combined with nails or a saw blade, making the weapon even more deadly. Now weapons do have durability, but I didn't mind it, since unlike Breath of the Wild, they don't break only after a few swings. Shots fired. Plus, you can repair the weapon as much as you like, so long as you have enough scrap. The melee combat system itself is fairly weighty, though I will say while I enjoyed penetrating enemies with my erect bat, the combat system doesn't exactly have a lot of depth. You press R2 repeatedly until the enemy is dead. Sometimes the enemy dodges your attack, then tries striking afterwards, prompting you to roll out of the way. After rolling, repeat the process of beating the bitch out of them until they're dead. So yeah, it's better than nothing. I would have liked it if you could pull off light and heavy attacks with your melee weapons, much like God of War or Horizon Forbidden West did. Being able to block with your weapon would have been really helpful as well. One thing they nailed, pun fully intended, is every time you concave an enemy's head with a sharp weapon, it is accompanied by an oh so satisfying Even when your melee weapons break, you still got your boot knife. It might be unbreakable, but it dishes out about as much damage as Machine Gun Kelly did during his rap feud with Eminem. You can also craft Molotovs, pipe bombs, along with a shitload of other throwable weapons. Resources aren't just used for making or enhancing weapons, but bandages for healing and stamina cocktails. Exploring is heavily encouraged, as every abandoned building will more often than not net you with a ton of resources. So crafting the thing you want to craft is never too difficult. The game also has a skill tree where you unlock additional abilities, much like most open world games have. Some of these skills are really crappy, while others are far more useful, like regaining stamina quicker, dishing out more damage with melee weapons, and repairing weapons with scrap are only a few examples. Unlike the melee combat, I have nothing bad to say about the gunplay. It's fluid, responsive, and the guns sound like, well, guns. You start the game with a pitiful ass arsenal, baby. But as you complete jobs for encampments across the map, you will earn camp credits, Days Gone's currency, along with points towards leveling up your trust level. Once you level up your trust level, you gain access to more bitchin' weapons and bike parts. You can also gain camp credits and trust level points by either trading in freaker ears or saving NPCs who are being attacked by a group of freakers out in the open world. Depending on what encampment you send them to, you may get more trust points but less camp credits, or vice versa. Working towards requiring better gear is so rewarding because you have to earn these things instead of being handed them from the beginning. And they make a huge difference during combat or traversal. Seeing how Deacon is a biker and all, it only makes sense he has a motorbike. You get your powerhouse of a bike taken from you during the prologue, where you then start from scratch with a new turret on wheels you'll be upgrading throughout the game. You can't customize your outfits. The customization options for the bike, on the other hand, are quite diverse. The bike has a very arcadey feel to it, which I think works in Days Gone's favor. You can tear all kinds of ass through the map's countless trails as you blissfully kick up dirt and run over enemies.
How'd you like that?
Eventually, you can even unlock the ability to use nitrous on your bike. With nitrous, you can jump over some gnarly ramps, dude! Obviously, nitrous depletes your gas quicker, but damn is it ever fun to use. On top of depleting gas, your bike can actually get damaged, but never enough where it blows up and you have to customize a new vehicle all over again. Grand Theft Auto. This might sound like an issue for some, but finding gas for refueling your bike or pieces of metal scrap for repairing your bike is made easy thanks to the abundance of gas stations, gas cans, along with the scrap you can find throughout the world. Though this could be because I played on normal mode for the 3 times I've beaten the game. What can I say? I'm a basic white bread bitch. It's likely resources are much more scarce on higher difficulties. Let me know in the comments below if you have beaten the game on hard, if that is indeed the case. The creator and writer of Days Gone, John Garvin, said the world was designed to be dangerous all the time. But was he right? Well, let's just say without your bike, you might as well be a survivalist in Naked and Afraid. I like how the fast travel system was handled. Much like real life, fast traveling costs gas. You also can't fast travel to certain areas if a freaker nest is in the way. Once you destroy that particular nest though, you can freely fast travel through the route. Much like with obtaining better gear, every time you clear out a nest, it feels like you earned it. rather than just uncovering fast travel points without any resistance as seen in most open world games. One thing I find annoying about the bike is every time you are riding on the road, at some point or another, you will always be shot off your bike by a sniper. In turn, more often than not, your ride gets totaled. You can spot these ambushes, but doing so requires the eyes of a fucking eagle. If you clear out these raiding camps, then they will no longer try ambushing you. So that's a plus. Realistically, there are times you will lose your bike. Thankfully, all you have to do is head towards the nearest encampment and ask the mechanic to go fetch it for you. Or does he get someone else to fetch it for you? Either way, you get your bike back. Keep in mind, it will cost you some credits. You can also buy gas from these encampments if you don't have enough to reach a gas station. There are two major enemy forces you'll face throughout the game. The first being people. Whenever there's a game revolving around an apocalyptic setting, the AI for human enemies is always a giant bowl of idiot soup. The Last of Us being the best example. Days Gone isn't really all that different. Much like with that game, I'll give them praise for enemies at least being smart enough to try to draw you out from cover with throwable weapons or using additional protection in the form of body armor. But even then, they're just kinda stupid. Sneaking behind an enemy and stabbing them is never not fun though, even if Deacon loves talking fairly loud as he's stabbing an enemy in the back, while still being balls deep in enemy territory. When you're being stealthy, do you know what you should be saying? Nothing.
Here's the path.
The second and more interesting enemy force are the Freakers, who are the far more dangerous of the two. They might look more like traditional zombies, but they have a few notable differences. Not only can they run faster than a motherfucker, but they can mutate and are actually alive, meaning you don't need to blow their wigs back to kill them. The standouts for me include the Breakers, who are basically roided versions of the standard enemy types called Swarmers. Runners, infected dogs that can run at 60 miles per hour, meaning they can easily keep up with your bike and knock you off it if you aren't able to successfully shoot them when the prompt comes up. Then you got the not so cuddly Rager Bears. As if bears weren't terrifying enough on their own, the developers decided, let's take the concept of Lucille, right? Except have a bear in its stead. That's what I really admire about this game. There are infected animals. The whole infected animal thing isn't done nearly as often as it should be. As much as I love the Freaker types in this game, there's only, I think, 9 of them in total. Considering the sheer scope of the game, I genuinely expected at least a few more enemy types. My favorite enemies to contend with are the Hordes. Basically, a bunch of swarmers band together, creating a gigantic pile of nah-uh. Destroying several of these hordes is required during the late game, and they make for the most intense, heart-pounding, balls-in-your-throat-inducing moments in Days Gone. A feeling that is only amplified by the music accompanying their presence. Before taking on the hordes, you have to plan things out. You can't just rush in without a strategy, otherwise you'll end up deaded real quick, let me tell ya. During these horde battles, you'll be doing a whole lot of running or rolling, both actions of which cost stamina. As luck would have it, you can upgrade your stamina along with your health and focus using Nero injectors at Nero checkpoints. Activating focus lets you slow down time, giving you a much larger window for pulling off more lethal shots. Before you can acquire these injectors, you have to disable the surrounding alarms first. Otherwise, you could very well bring a horde down on you, and you don't want that, now do ya? The world itself contains several distinct biomes. There are a bunch of little collectibles scattered around that give you more insight of Oregon's history. The map is big, but it's not so big until the point where it feels overwhelming or bloated. What I love about the world of Days Gone is that it feels like a living, breathing ecosystem. Freakers will not only fight and eat non-infected animals, but their own kind. This is unusual considering infected creatures don't eat one another in other similar literature. The weather is dynamic. One moment it's sunny, then the next it's pissing down all kinds of rain, then the next it's snowing. Freakers get stronger depending on the weather, most notably when it snows. During the daytime, hordes will fuck right off to a cave where they sleep until nightfall. That's not even the craziest part. No, the craziest part is that much like us, they too take fat shits. Even if I enjoyed the sights and gameplay, Days Gone also suffers from the same problem most modern open-world games suffer from, a condition known as clear out the enemy camp syndrome. Clearing out enemy camps can be fun, but not when it's done excessively. If anything good can be said about the large number of enemy camps, it's that upon clearing them out, you unlock fast travel points and new crafting recipes. The world design may not be perfect, but the music composer Nathan Whitehead did a masterful job at capturing the post-apocalyptic feel of a landscape located within the wilderness. A wilderness filled with hope, desperation, and even dread. From a graphical standpoint, the game is actually a looker. The open world is beautiful with a surprisingly good draw distance. Character models, Deacon's especially, are highly detailed. They really captured the look of a gruff white male protagonist perfectly. As for the random one-off NPCs, they do look hella derpy. As someone who played this game for the first time on the PS4 Pro, the difference between the Pro and the PS5 in the performance and resolution categories is night and day. Like God of War and Ghost of Tsushima, you are basically getting a free remaster, one that runs at a very stable 60 FPS. The premise of Days Gone in itself isn't original by any means. Quite frankly, the apocalyptic world filled with flesh-craving infected monsters has been done to the point where if this was a horse being beaten, it would be nothing but ashes at this point. When you take into consideration all the good points I mentioned beforehand, however, I feel as if Days Gone does enough to stand out as its own thing. The fact this game will never get a sequel, yet the likes of Knack or Bubsy did, is a crime against humanity.